I'm Charlie Lohmueller. I live at 1303 Fenton Avenue. It's in Reading. Reading, Ohio is about 8 or 9 miles north of Cincinnati. I was born in Reading. I'm a 90-year-old Navy veteran, World War II. I enlisted in the Navy in October 1942. My older brother Herman was drafted earlier that year. He didn't like the Army, so he suggested I enlist in the Navy. I enlisted in the Navy and beat the draft by 2 weeks. I left Reading by bus to Union Terminal. Took the train to Great Lakes Naval Training Station north of Chicago. First thing there, we were issued new clothing, underwear, shoes, coats, which we had to stencil our name on all the clothing. Then we all got a burr haircut. Everyone was issued a hammock. First night didn't get any sleep at all. I kept falling out of the hammock. It took about 8 or 9 days to get used to before I learned how to sleep in a hammock. Next we read the rules and regulations about the Navy. Went through interviews. I wanted to play in the band, but didn't pass the test. So I was assigned to a drum and bugle corps. Great Lakes, at the time, had 12 drum and bugle corps. I spent all my time with the bugle corps. After completing 4 weeks of basic training, we graduated. I was assigned to assist with the bugle corps to teach bugling and marching. Every 4 weeks, we'd have new recruits to train for competition. The 12 different corps would compete in music, marching, and moving on the field. I was the leader of the band on the field. Regimental commanders would bet on competition. After failing to capture first place after several months, my company commander said to me, "Lohmueller, I'm losing too much money. I'm getting a new leader for my band," so I was replaced. While in the band, we would be in war bond rallies, parades, in and around Chicago. We played at bond rallies at Soldiers Field, and several times we were on the Peabody Navy radio show on Friday nights. Left Chicago, was assigned to the USS Arkansas, U.S. Battleship 33 at Norfolk, Virginia. The USS Arkansas was the oldest battleship in the Navy. Went through New York, joined other ships, destroyers, battleships, and 25 or 30 troop transports and supply ships. We made several trips across the Atlantic that winter and spring, bringing more troops and supplies to Ireland and England. The trip took about 7 days, zigzagging, trying to avoid German subs. North Atlantic was very rough in wintertime. We were informed that we would be part of the Normandy invasion. Our job would be to bomb installations on shore before our troops landed. About 4,000 or 5,000 ships met in the channel between England and France. As we got closer to France, weather got very bad. The whole invasion was postponed for 24 hours. All ships had to make a 180-degree turn and go back over the waters we had just traveled. 12 hours later, and all 4,000 ships did a 180-degree turn and headed in the right direction. Hours before the invasion, paratroopers and glider troops were dropped on the Normandy coast, a few miles inland, to knock out bridges and to ship reinforcements from getting through. We anchored about 2.5 miles off the coast. Troops went to hit the beach at 6:30. Waters were very rough, heavily mined. Our men on the beach were having a very rough time to even get to the beach. Some of the wounded troops were brought to our ship for medical attention. We had 4 doctors on our ship. Troops were landing all the first day and night. On the second day, the troops and bulldozers were building roads to make it easier for the troops and tanks and other equipment to make inland up the beach. We were constantly lobbing 12-inch shells ahead of our troops. The CB sank old Liberty ships filled with concrete to form a harbor. They were also building an airfield on the beach. On the 5th day, we remained at Normandy for 12 days. The nights were terrible. Planes overhead, dropping bombs, mines, troops, supplies, and equipment were going up to the beach. For the troops who were there, we left that area in the English Channel. We went to Plymouth, England. We're in the Mediterranean Sea. 3 or 4 days later, we pulled into Taranto, Italy, southern part. Left Taranto, Italy, and went to Palermo, Sicily. Then southern France. Did a lot of shore bombardment on the southern France as our troops landed. They didn't have any trouble at all. Very nice landing. We took on 177 prisoners. We took them prisoners to the Oran, North Africa. Left the area, went to Boston. Several days later, we left Boston Harbor south past Florida to the Panama Canal. We went through the canal into the Pacific Ocean. And then we went to Long Beach, California. Then to Pearl Harbor, which was a 6-day trip from California to Pearl Harbor. Stayed a few days, and out to the Pacific to the Ulithi Islands. Here we went to Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima was a very small island in the Pacific. Was only 4.5 miles long, 2 miles wide. We stayed there for 10 days. Each day, bombarding the island till dark. AA fired back, fought every enemy planes daily. Jap troops were in caves on Matsurabaki. Our ship, plus 2 other battleships, plus several carriers and destroyers, bombed the island for 3 days. No return fire whatsoever. It looked like the island was deserted. By the time our troops landed, all hell broke loose. Our troops could not get to the beach because of the heavy fire from the caves dug into the mountains. Some of the caves were 25 to 30 feet deep, housing 100 or so Japs. It was the nearest island to Japan. We needed that island for our planes to stop and refuel on the way to and from bombing on Japan. It was the bloodiest battle in naval history, marine history. About 20,000 Japs dead, 4,000 Marines dead, many were injured. On February 23rd, flag was raised atop Mount Surabaki. Friday, February 23rd, we moved to Okinawa. It was only 300 miles from Japan. Our own planes were our spotting guys, giving us targets to hit. We were around Okinawa for 47 days. Daily, we would lob shells on the island. At night, we were always alert for Jap suicide bombers, suicide craft, suicide swimmers. In Iran, in our task force, we had 9 battleships, 12 cruisers, 25 destroyers. Second day, weather got very bad. All vents were closed, got very hot below deck. We had no air conditioning. This was very close to Japan. Army and Marines landed on the beach. We fired daily, trying to fire ahead of our troops. The island was completely surrounded by Allied ships firing at all shore batteries, shore installations. A dozen small islands surround Okinawa. Troops were taking some of the sails. From there we went to Guam. I received a telegram from my father stating my brother Hermie was killed in France. We had liberty in Guam. Went to refill, went to party for beach parties, ball games, shows. We had movies on the ship every night. We then went to the Philippine Islands. The whole Pacific Fleet was there. Liberty every other day. Atomic bomb was dropped at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the war was over. They loaded 250 CBs. We took the CBs to Pearl Harbor. It took 12 days to get to Pearl. We headed for the States. We got to Seattle, Washington. We arrived in Seattle for Navy Day, Fleet Week, and Navy Day celebrations. Hundreds of people lined the docks. Nightly dances were held, dinners, invitations were plentiful. Parties, shows, tours, Seattle was our host for the next 2 weeks. We went back to Pearl, pick up more passengers. Unnecessary seamen and others were transferred or discharged to make room for our passengers. At Pearl, we picked up 1,000 troops. They took over our whole ship, bunks, our compartments, everything. In Frisco, several days, then back to Pearl again for another trip. This time we took 1,200 returning troops back to the States. This was our third trip. This was our third trip returning troops. To keep the men busy, mops and buckets were provided to keep the decks clean. After 10 minutes later, all the mops and buckets went overboard. Nobody knows how they got in the water. They also gave them paintbrushes and paint up overboard. Men were going home to be discharged. They didn't want to work. I got off the ship in Frisco, took troop trip to Chicago. I was discharged at Great Lakes on 1/1/1946. Got home the same day. Was met by my father, Uncle Frank, Rita, and Jean, my older brother's wife, Jean. That took my life out of me when I come home, and I come home. My brother didn't. And his wife was on the shore. It was hard for me, but I made it. That's about my war history. That's about it.
Well, Charlie, if we can back up a little bit, what sort of position did you have on board the ship? What was your function?
Yeah, I got it here somewhere. All right, now.
Sure.
I should have put it in there, but I didn't. Aboard ship, I was assigned to the battleship Arkansas, to the band. I was connected with the band, but I was listed as a bugler. I joined 4 other buglers. We were assigned to the officer of the day. When we report, when we're out at sea, I was under the command of the captain or the admiral or the officer in charge, whoever was in charge. When we were at battle stations, I was a stretcher bearer. That's about my lifespan.
Well, you weren't assigned to any guns or anything on board the ship?
In my 4 years in the Navy, I never fired a gun, never got any training. The only thing I did in training was had to go through a swimming test. I passed the swimming test, that was it. No other training whatsoever.
One of the things I noticed was interesting, I hadn't heard before, you talked about suicide swimmers. Had you seen any of those? And
I was close enough, but they talked about it. Japanese.
They talked about it. You have any idea how they...
I don't know how they got there. I saw the suicide planes, definitely, the kamikaze pilots. A lot of them came out of our ships even.
Any of them hit your ship?
No, but we shot a couple down.
Okay. What about the flag rising on Mount Suribachi and Iwo Jima? Did you see that?
We were close enough we could see it with binoculars, yes.
You actually could see that?
From where we were at, we could see it.
Wow, that's pretty neat. That's pretty neat. You mentioned, I forget where it was in your travels, but you transported prisoners. This was in the...
No, they didn't know us to go with them, so they brought them out to our ships.
This here was in the Pacific?
Southern France.
Oh, okay, this is in Europe then.
Yeah.
Okay, and you transported them from France to?
Well, we transported end up at Oran, North Africa. Dropped them off there.
Okay.
They had a storage area there for prisoners. Prisoner bar camp or something, I guess, there.
How would you handle them on board ship? Would they be kept on deck or?
Oh, no, they were under, we had a marine detachment on the ship, but marine detachment took care of all the guarding them.
Okay. So would they provide them billets down below deck?
Well, yeah, definitely.
They were billeted below deck. Okay, all right. So it was interesting that here you served in both theaters, the European theater and the Pacific.
Almost 3/4 of the way around the world. From Italy all the way over to the Philippines. 3/4 of the way around the world, I guess.
I know this was during wartime, but did you go through the King Neptune thing at the equator and what have you?
Oh yeah, we went through the usual routine,
So everybody...
Very nice.
Very nice.
Very colorful.
Care to relay any stories in that regard?
Whatever I did, that was 70 years ago. I forgot whatever it was.
Okay. your trips to Pearl. At the close of the war, your ship actually made 3 round trips.
Right, we
bringing trips.
over half of our, when the war was over half of our personnel were either discharged or moved someplace else to make room for all these troops, Army troops we had to pick up out there, bring them back. Our Navy or the government was trying to get as many people back as they can, so we made 3 trips when the war was over to bring people back from Pearl, bring them back to the States. We brought 3,000 or 4,000 people back as on our ships.
Per trip.
3 extra trips, yes.
Yeah, per trip. I thought it was interesting the way buckets and mops
Well,
disappeared.
they didn't want to work. All they wanted to loaf. All they wanted to do is loaf because they were all going to be discharged going home. And of course, they took over our whole ship. We had no place to sleep or nothing. They took over our bunks and everything, so we just had to sleep where we could. We were the ship's company, but they took over our bunks and everything else.
Okay, in that regard, then, did you have any opportunities to see any of the U.S. shows?
Yeah, we was over in Ireland. Irving Berlin's This Is the Army show. Put a show over in Ireland. We saw that over there with Irving Berlin and his whole troops. And where the other lot where Jack Haley was on our ship. Can't think who else we might have had.
Did you have any experiences with the Red Cross?
Yeah, I think every one of them. Always plenty of coffee and donuts.
Coffee and donuts at all the ports, huh?
Oh, yeah.
I have a question in regards to Kilroy. Did you ever see any signs about Kilroy was here?
Everybody she went, Kilroy was here, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Did you meet any fellows in the service from hometown?
Yeah, I ran into 2 different people I went to school with. Ran into Tom Jordan over in Oran, North Africa. I went to school with him, and a guy named Paul Hill. I ran into him over in Sicily, Palermo, Sicily, walking down the beach one day. And in fact, I went out to his camp. A couple days later, he came out to our ship and had lunch at our ship. Had lunch right on our battleship. Two of them I ran into, I think.
They were fellows from Reading here?
Right from Reading, I went to school with him, yeah.
Or elementary school or high school?
Yeah, elementary.
Elementary. That'd be St. Peter and Paul's?
St. Peter and Paul.
Okay. Was there anything that stuck with you, a memory through your experience?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I liked, especially when we hit these towns, and the USO had so many good places. Always plenty of coffee and donuts and plenty of girls for dancing and shows, and I think the USO did a wonderful job during World War II. I know they keep sending around for donations, and I get something that I always send something to them because I'm grateful to them for everything they did for me while I was in there.
Was there anything you would like to add towards the end of this recording session?
No, I think that's about it. It's 70 years ago. It's hard to remember everything.
Sure it is. Sure it is.
After 70 years, you lose a lot.
Well, Charlie, thank you for taking your time to participate in the Veterans History Project. Charlie, during your experience, were you in a position? Well, I had to stop that. Charlie, during your experience, did you have the occasion to see any of the notable admirals or generals?
Yeah, right before the invasion, I'd say probably maybe 2 days before the invasion, we had 4,000 ships in the English Channel heading towards France, and getting ready for the Normandy invasion. And it was on a Sunday afternoon, and coming through the harbor was General Eisenhower. Eisenhower was in charge of the whole Normandy invasion. He come by, zigzagging through all the ships, just waving at everybody. And I went out a couple hundred yards away, but at least I saw Eisenhower anyway. We know he was there.
Go ahead.
On the Pacific, these Japanese kamikaze pilots were strapped to small planes, and they were dropped off at other planes, and as they as they were coming down, they were silent because they had no motor, nothing on it. They was just gliding. They just glided until they hit something. They kept going until they hit something. They either hit a ship or they were all down low. You couldn't hear nothing. A lot of times we'd have movies on the top deck at night and they'd holler, kamikaze, kamikaze. Everybody would be below deck because you didn't know whether the thing was going to hit or not. But we never did get hit, but we did shoot at a lot of them. But they were almost a daily affair out in the Pacific.
Was it unusual to have a night attack by kamikazes?
Oh, no, that's when they usually come in at night.
Was that right?
They come in right low in the water, and radar couldn't pick them up, and they were very dangerous. Very dangerous.
Were many fellows injured on board your ship?
No, we didn't have anybody injured, but everybody was scared to death, I'll tell you. But it was such a ordeal all the time when you were, especially with beach bombardments. You'd go in close and just kept firing, and they started to fire back at you, and you didn't know whether one was going to hit you or not. You never knew. There were so many people that went berserk. I always held my calm, but other people, I've seen them go wild a lot of times, scared to death and didn't know what to do, you know. But he did a lot of praying, I'll tell you. Must have done some good up and come back home. So,
in light of that, did you often have religious services on board ship?
well, whatever it was called, we had a chaplain on the ship, yes.
What persuasion was he?
Well, he had Catholic services and general services too. He had both kind.
Okay.
I used to be a pretty good friend of his. I used to serve mass for him every once in a while. He have a mass I'd always try to serve for him. So,
Do you recall his name?
no, not really. Too long ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
On a battleship like that, you had usually have a chaplain of some sort. Of course, I was on the Arkansas. I was the oldest battleship in the Navy. It was the only ship that still had wood deck on the top deck. Was all wood, and they used to holy stone that deck to keep it looking nice and clean.
Excuse me. What does holy
Holy
stone?
stone is when you take a brick and you scrub the actual wood deck with a brick.
Oh,
You take a stick and put it in the middle of the brick and shove it back and forth with water, and all you use is water, and that brick cleans the top deck. He cleans it because it makes the top deck kind of raw looking. But I wouldn't want to walk around on barefoot. But
You're exposing new wood, fresh wood.
Exposed new wood. You had to take all the old wood away and wear it away. And that ship, like I said, had an old wood deck, no air conditioning. The only air we got down below deck, 5th to 6th floor below deck, was from the vents on the top side. Of course, you get up in the North Atlantic in the wintertime, the seas get so rough, they had to close all the vents off. So there was no air moving at all down the 4th and 5th deck below decks there. It was so horribly unbearable till the storm blew over and they could open the vents and pull in some fresh air at the top side. It was really horrible with no air conditioning. But we put up with it, I guess, and had to. That's all. Didn't have any choice.
How many people would you have on board?
We had about 2,000 people. 2,000 people on deck. We had a 50-man Marine crew. We had about a 40-piece band, which I was attached to the band. But every time they'd load supplies, they start loading supplies maybe 9 o'clock in the morning, bringing on supplies for our next trip where we're going. The band would always sit down and play a concert then. The band didn't have to work then. That way I would always grab a horn and sit down with the band so we didn't have to help haul supplies on. It was usually an all-day affair, 8 or 10 hours, to load all the supplies on the ship for your next trip out. But the band was playing the concert, sitting down playing the concert. Good duty.
So was that programmed so you fellows wouldn't have to participate in the loading and unloading?
Music ended the whole.
Oh, okay.
We hoped it did anyway. At least we got out of work that way anyway.
Sure. Very interesting. Have you had any reunions?
Yeah, they had
With that crew?
quite a few afterwards. The war was over. They kept sending me invitations to want me to go up to these reunions, but with my work, I didn't get any vacations. I didn't get any vacations where I worked, and I had 6 kids, and first of all, I could never afford it. Dues were something like $50 a year to join the damn club, and I didn't have no $50 to join the damn club, and couldn't get off to work to go to Salt Lake City or Tempe, Arizona or something. I never went to any of them, so they kept bugging me to join, but I never did.
You ever stay in contact with the fellows that were in the band?
No, not at all, not at all, none whatsoever.
What about your connections here in Cincinnati with organizations like the VFW or American Legion or what have you?
Yeah, I'm a 65-year member of the American Legion. I'm a life member. They gave me a life membership back in the 50s. The Legion gave me a life membership in the American Legion back in the 50s. I haven't paid any dues back in the 50s. I started a band there at the American Legion in 1946. I stuck at the band today. This coming Memorial Day with luck. It's coming Memorial Day with luck. I hoping to get the band together for the 67th consecutive year in the Memorial Day Parade. If I can get enough boys out, I don't know. Only got about 12 left. But if I can get the 12 out that are still in the band, plus I'll pick up a few extras someplace else, we'll have a band in this coming Memorial Day Parade. Be our 67th consecutive year in that parade. I don't get the band out any other time of the year, just once a year now. I did it for the first 50 years. I guess we were out 18, 20 times a year, I guess, but now it's down to once a year. I just lost two guys that died last year. But I'm 90 years old, so I guess it's time for me to quit sometimes.
Out of that group, how many are World War II veterans?
Only 3 of us. Chick Alvarez is one of them. Chick's been with me ever since 1946.
And who is the other one?
Art Sill. He's
Oh,
the only
Art
one I can
Sill.
think of.
Yeah, I know Art Sill.
You know Art?
Sure do.
Well, that's right, he worked at Maryland. Yeah.
Yeah,
He does. He has no connection with the Legion at all, but he still plays in our band.
good for him.
I saw him about 2 weeks ago. You know, he got married again?
No,
Yeah,
Well,
90, he's better than 90.
good for
I
him.
saw him about last month or so. He told me he got married again. He lost his wife and 40-year-old friend of his. He said, I've known her for 40 years, he says.